Gang, what's up? Ehren here, Canadian Looney. We have Pierre Poilievre just delivered a big speech. The best part of these speeches are the scrums that follow. Like, let's see if there are any interesting questions. There usually are one or two. Let's see how it goes. Pierre is going to expose Carney for what he is. Perhaps that's what's next. Let's look.
Global news.
Yes.
The federal government has given Algoma Steel a $400 million loan in light of the ongoing U.S. tariffs. Do you support this move, and is that enough?
Canadian steel workers deserve job security, and Canadians need a strong steel sector. Steel is literally the bones of an industrial economy and of our national security. We can't lose steel jobs. Unfortunately, Mark Carney has failed. He broke his promise to, quote, negotiate a win with President Trump. Instead, since Carney took office, he has allowed the Americans to double tariffs on Canada. Now, it was him that promised that he would have elbows up and stop the steel tariffs, but he's broken that promise, another Liberal bait and switch. There's one tariff that Mark Carney could get rid of on Canadian steel today, and that is the industrial carbon tax. The Liberal industrial carbon tax will shut down our entire steel sector. There's, I think it was Stelco that said this tax will cost them $500 million by 2030. If the Carney Liberals go ahead with this tax, they will destroy our steel sector. We've seen a decade of deindustrialization under Liberal taxes and red tape. It cannot go on. So my message to Mark Carney is, put aside your net zero ideology. To Mark Carney is, put aside your net zero ideology and your Liberal policies and do what's right for Canadians. Join with Conservatives to end the industrial carbon tax and bring steel jobs back to our country. Thank you.
Good morning, Pierre. Will you tempt him with True North?
Sorry, with who?
True North.
True North.
This past week, we saw a church burning in Canada, a tragic incident at a church in Michigan, and over 100 incidents of church burning or vandalism since 2021 in Canada.
Yes.
What do you make of the sectarian strife seen targeting towards Christians? Do you think the government's doing enough to combat this, and what would you do?
I think it's terrible. No, the government is not doing enough, and I would do a lot more. So let's recap where we are. 100 churches have been burned. You hear almost nothing from the Liberal government about this. Christians may be the number one group that is victims of hate-based violence. But of course, it's not politically correct to say that. 100 terrorist attacks against Canadian churches. This anti-Christian hate has got to stop. We've seen with this Liberal government is the number of things they've done to allow this. One, they've separated people into groups. Their ideology seeks to identity politics, divides one group against another, and then we're surprised when that leads to violence. Two, the Liberals have reduced criminal penalties for arson, so people are not afraid to get caught burning things down anymore. And three, they have failed to put law enforcement resources where they belong, which is to say going after criminals rather than targeting farmers, duck hunters, and professional sport shooters. So Conservatives would take exactly the opposite approach. We would bring in mandatory prison sentences for extortionists. We would crack down on hate crime, which is more than doubled under the Liberals, with tougher laws that throw criminals in prison. We used to make sure that the foreign criminals that are in our country illegally are kicked out of Canada, and we would redirect resources away from banning duck hunters, farmers, and sport shooters towards more police and border services that will keep all Canadians safe. Because frankly, Canadians of all faiths, including Christians, deserve to worship in peace. Thank you.
Good morning, it's Campbell Clark from the Globe and Mail. I'd like to ask you about inflation and food inflation.
Yes.
Inflation's running at 1.9% as of August, food inflation at 3.4%.
Right.
You also ran on a platform with substantial deficits. So could you tell me what you think the rate of inflation would be if you were elected with those substantial deficits? And also, you were saying last year that the biggest cause of food inflation was the fuel charge, the consumer carbon tax. That's gone now. So has that lowered food inflation?
Okay, with two parts. First of all, I ran on cutting the deficit, and we had costed reductions. We had very specific reductions in the size of the federal bureaucracy. We proposed to cut the consultants by $10 billion and to cut foreign aid in half. I could go on. So we proposed to cut the Liberal deficit.
What would be the impact of inflation?
It would bring it down. When you bring deficits down, you bring inflation down. Inflation is caused by one thing, and only one thing, and that's government. Government spending and government taxes drive up the cost of food. Food prices should be plummeting, to be frank, because farmers produce far more food on far less land, with far less fertilizer, far less labor, far less water than ever before. So it would be based on the market. Food prices should be dropping dramatically every single year. Why are they going up? Because government. Well, you don't believe me you don't believe me when I say that?
I don't believe that's an explanation for food prices. There's demand and
No,
supply.
you're right. And what increases the cost? The taxes. So they didn't get rid of the carbon tax. I said I would get rid of the entire carbon tax for everyone, for everything for real. The Liberals have an industrial carbon tax, which the food professor says applies on the food chain. It taxes farm equipment and fertilizer, so to tax food. They've got the fuel standard tax, which is gradually rising up to the same level as the fuel charge. Then they've got the food packaging tax, which is a plastic tax that is going to increase the cost of food because plastic is the best way to preserve food. And then, of course, there's the inflation tax. When you print money, you get inflation. And you know, with respect, I know when I said this back in 2021, you all told me it was wrong, and of course, it was the right thing. Maybe my friend here, you didn't say that. I wasn't accusing you of that. But everyone said it was wrong, but it is a scientific economic fact. When you print money, you get inflation. Just like Mark Carney caused the worst inflation of all of the neighboring countries in the UK when he was the Bank of England governor, just like when he advised Justin Trudeau to print money in Canada, we got terrible food inflation. So you need to cut the deficit, eliminate all of the food taxes, and then allow our farmers to bring nutritious, delicious, affordable food to your plate and mine, and everybody's.
Did the carbon tax lower food inflation, the reduction of
I think when the Liberals take their hand out of one of your pockets and then put their hands in three of your other pockets, you're going to end up paying more.
Thank you. Next question.
Good morning, Rachel Ayello, CTV News. Just to go back to the Algoma Steel announcement, the federal government is framing this as a reason why the upcoming deficit is going to be so large, because they say they are using this money to support Canadian industries. Can you just clarify, do you support this example of spending? And if not, what would you do differently to support those jobs?
Thank you. So we have to look at the details because there's the press release and then there's the reality. And for example, you know, Liberals created a $70 billion housing bureaucracy they said would make homes affordable. And what did it do? It doubled housing costs. So if you had asked 10 years ago how wonderful this new program would be, then maybe people would have agreed, but the result was actually to increase housing costs. We need to look at what they've actually proposed and what they're actually doing. As for this business of investing, okay, this is nothing new. I encourage you all to go look back at the video reel of the Liberal ministers and of Justin Trudeau's 2015 election campaign. He claimed that if he ran deficits, it would be an investment that would grow the economy. And what happened over those 10 Liberal years? The per capita GDP in Canada was the worst of any G7 country. Then, after COVID was over, they began spending on deficit dollars on things unrelated to COVID, and they said it was an investment. What happened? Our GDP per capita grew at the lowest rate in the G7, and we had the worst inflation in 40 years. So now, Mark Carney is repeating the same Liberal talking points of the last 10 years, claiming that when he borrows and spends, it is an investment. he will get exactly the same results that the Liberals have gotten over the decade that has gone behind it. It is the definition of insanity, is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. Frankly, the only difference between Mark Carney's deficit spending and Justin Trudeau's is that Carney's is much higher and much more irresponsible, and it will have even more destructive effects. Deficit spending weighs down the economy, crowds out investment, drives up the cost of living, and makes us poorer. What we need is to unlock, you asked my approach, we need to unlock the free enterprise system where businesses have low taxes, fast permits, access to markets so that they can build. We should have the fastest building permits anywhere in the world so that money-making projects that create wealth for our people can be unleashed. So I propose we pass the Canadian Sovereignty Act, which will make this the best place in the world to open a steel mill, dig a mine, build a pipeline, export our resources, expand a port. That is how we will unlock real private sector investment that generates revenue for the government rather than generating costs for taxpayers and consumers. Thank you.
Look inside yourself, Rosemary.
It's time for a change in this country, my friends, a real change.
Now I have a question. Who's ready?
How many kids did you molest with Jeffrey Epstein?
More than just elbows.
Wow.
I am a European, actually.
Oh, you are?
Oh. Irish citizen, yeah.
These are Muslim values.
A real change.
These are Canadian values.
Wow.
Speaking as a European, I love.
Happy birthday! A few days short. A little bit. A few days short, but didn't have a chance to see you on the day.
Reticent to
Because
talk
I'm
about
because I'm a good negotiator. I have negotiated a number of situations in the past. I know how to manage crises.
This is the most consequential vote of our lifetimes.
A real change.
These are Canadian values. Because President Trump has ignited a trade war that is ruptured. No, we don't like Trump here.
All right, elbows up.
Elbows up.
Happy birthday!
Being aware of what potential conflicts of interest
What possible conflict would you have, Stephanie? Stephanie, I'm complying with the rules. I'm complying with the rules in advance. Point final. Look inside yourself, Rosemary.